Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Leadership Forum Webinar, part of our series here at Eldermark that we started during COVID and continue on. Got a great topic today. I'll just basically say a warm and fuzzy topic, literally, for us. So happy to have you with us. I am Mark Anderson, Chief Client Officer at Eldermark. My contact information is there. And feel free to contact me at any time about anything about Eldermark or about this forum. We started this forum, gosh, I think this is getting into almost our third year with the intent of connecting those in leadership positions in senior living to learn, share, and support each other in our work. We hold these webinars typically the first Wednesday of each month at 12 noon Central Time. And so if this is your first visit, welcome. If you're a repeat participant, thanks for coming back. Check out our webinar calendar for our future offerings for this series, as well as all the other webinars that we offer here at Eldermark to our customers. Just a few housekeeping things before we get into our topic today. If you've got any key staff changes, please let us know at support@eldermark.com. so we can keep our records straight. It's no secret or surprise that turnover remains a constant in the senior living business line. So we want to be sure to keep up with who is new at your community. So let us know. And then be sure to read the latest release notes that we send out. If you would like to get the release notes and you're not getting them from us, let us know. Again, you can contact support at eldermark.com and we will get that arranged for you. Just a couple things on technology updates here. Just want to still promote some of the newer things that we've been offering to our customers of late. I just included 3 today. Our Purelytics integration. This is a software that does your infection control and antibiotic stewardship management. It's a really great system. Our integration is a bi-directional integration with this software. It follows and is consistent with the CDC, CMS, OSHA guidelines for infection control practices and assisted living. So if you want to learn more about that, let me know. And then Elder Forms. This is one of our newest offerings. It's a complete electronic document management solution in concert with Worldview Technology, a sister company. And this is basically a way for you to manage all of your forms documents electronically, including e-signatures. And then Elder Forms includes this great, we call it Elder Charts, kind of an electronic file management system where you can store all your e-documents in an organized fashion for easy access and audit trails. So great solution there. And then finally, Elder Smarts is our newest data management platform where we are offering analytics as a service. This is taking off like a rocket for us, and it's been really fun to work with our development team personally on developing important content sets for Elder Smarts. Want to learn more about that? Let me know. All right, just a few notes before we begin our formal presentation today. All of you will remain muted during the webinar. Please use the question feature on your control panel. So if you have a question you want to ask any of us during this time together, please include that in the question feature and we will get to your question as time permits, which is pretty much we always get to the questions. So after today, you will get a recording link to this webinar sometime within 24 hours after we finish up today. So watch your email for that. Feel free to share that recording with your colleagues as you like. And reminder, you're always welcome to contact any of our presenters directly via email and myself as well. All right, so today's topic and presentation, managing pet care and senior living. And we're going to spend a few minutes exploring some software and telemedicine solutions to help keep our pets healthy and happy within the senior living setting. And just a little bit of preparation for this topic today, and it wasn't that hard. I mean, for any of you who have a pet, or for people close to you who have pets, you know, it's easy to talk about the benefits of pets in our lives. And even the CDC recognizes that, you know, there are benefits to having pets, such as increased opportunities for exercise or getting outside, how these activities contribute to our wellness, not only in physical wellness, but in cognitive function, and other ways that having a pet can help improve or sustain our wellness as humans. And there's so much research out there about the benefits of pet therapy, or just the presence of pets within the senior living setting. This listed a few of these here, and our guest presenters will get a little bit more into it. But, you know, I go back to my operator days, and, you know, we would often talk with colleagues that, look, you know, if you want to light up a room in a senior living setting, you just need to introduce one of two things, and that would be babies or animals. And it just changes the dynamics in the room immediately. There is something about the introduction of pet animals within a setting like that that just ignites people in a very, very special way. We do have some customers that, of course, are managing their pet services within the Eldermark software. And if you're not doing that and you want to, I just thought I'd introduce a couple examples. Then if you want more help with this, you can contact your customer success manager assigned to your account, or let me know and I'll connect you to someone here. You know, so for example, you can set up transaction types in your system, where if you have a monthly rate for a pet fee or some other recurring fee related to pet care, that can be set up in your transaction type setup for inclusion on your invoices. And then similarly, in your services setup, we have customers that are doing this frequently, where they're setting up the different kinds of pet services that are offered within their community to their residents, and if there are any associated fees for that, how much time is scheduled for that, can all be set up in the background. And then these services can be included in your residence service plan, including these kind of services, if they are available in your residence service plan, I think also helps to demonstrate not only to the resident and their natural supports, but to regulatory authority that you, as a senior living provider, are addressing those resident-centered needs, those resident preference needs, and kind of related to social determinants of health, the benefits of helping a resident customer support their possession of having a pet present where they live in your community. All right, now on to our guest presenters on our topic today on managing and the benefits of pets within senior living, and some of the benefits that can be offered through Whiskerdox as our example today. We have Deb Leon and Nicole Rogers, both from Whiskerdox. And so I am going to turn things over to the two of you. Welcome and thank you so much for being a part of today. I'm going to turn things over to you, Nicole.
Thanks for having us here, Mark.
Thank you so much. It's fun to be here, and it's I hope we get a lot of information across and a lot of questions at the end or during, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I was introduced to Whiskerdox through a friend in my network, and I talked to these guys, good night, last year sometime, kind of as COVID was coming down, and I said, I've got to get you guys on my forum webinar series, because I was really taken with the concept of what Whiskerdox is doing to support residents in assisted living and their pets. So take it, Nicole.
All right. Well, thanks for having us here. I'll actually have Deb give a quick introduction to her background and kind of the concepts that we brought over here to the pet space.
Great. So yeah, just, the first question that always comes up is what are we doing? And I think the easiest way to answer that is to just think of, in the world that you've all lived in, Nurse Lines, Teledoc, companies like that who have provided access through virtual means regarding family members, individual patients, et cetera. And so pet telehealth, we are the largest provider in North America, and it only is because nobody else was doing it, frankly, in the beginning. We were kind of shocked when I entered the marketplace from human healthcare, and I was involved in the early stages of telemedicine for humans. And when we came over here to do the same thing for our furry animal friends and birds and our avian and lizards, rabbits, whatever, we found there was nothing here. So basically, Whiskerdox is the leading provider of pet telehealth services in North America. We're 24 hours a day, and we do it through multiple channels. So it could be chat, phone, email, video, whatever, depending on the circumstance. And again, it's I think right now we're at about 6 million pets under management, Mark. So we've come a long way in our 8 years of slugging through the beginning stages of a new industry.
Great. So Mark had hit a little bit on, why are we here, right? And there's a few reasons, mental health, physical health, and we're going to dive just a little bit into some of that data. This probably is not news to anyone here, but, loneliness is just as deadly as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, right? So 85% of survey respondents in the senior market specifically have indicated that their pets reduce their loneliness. That's a really big driver of having pets in these communities, having their own personal animals in these communities. At Whiskerdox, we're involved with an organization called the Human Animal Bond Research Institute. And they conduct a number of scientific studies as well as surveys and grants specific to the benefit of pets on a variety of different populations. But specifically, one of the things that they did during COVID or post-COVID, not that we're really post-COVID, but in 2021 was they surveyed physicians to find out more about the impact of pet ownership according to the physicians. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The controls over here are interesting. So 87% of physicians said that their patient's mood or outlook had improved because they had a pet. But most importantly, people who adopted pets during that first year of COVID, 22% of them had been told to get a pet by their doctor or therapist, specifically for that reason.
It's like a prescription.
Impact. Yep. Yep. And we have a great video that we can send out to all the attendees here that is just that, prescription pets. If we had a pet, what would the warning labels look like as a prescription? And it's very enjoyable. It's very fun. We're happy to send that out to all the attendees here. Now, on to talking a little bit about the health, a little bit more about the mental health part of it. These surveys, this was out of the University of Michigan, again, specific to seniors. What is their pet doing for them? It's helping them enjoy life, making them feel loved, reducing their stress. But one of the more interesting things is what's happening in terms of their pain and things like that as well. So it helps them, having a pet helps them cope with symptoms, reduces the intensity of pain that they're experiencing, physical pains. And these are coming directly from the surveys with the seniors. On the physical health side, as most of you, this is probably not news, but as most of you know, about 75% of the seniors in senior care facilities will have some form of cardiac disease, whether that's related to high blood pressure, or cholesterol. About 10% across the board have lower decreased blood pressure and cholesterol, which is really significant according to the American Heart Association. Having a pet also makes people more active, right? So as you can see, those numbers in terms of physical health improvements, 34% are more physically active. After having a heart attack, 33% improvement in outcomes following a heart attack, or 27% following a stroke among dog-owning seniors. And there's a 24% risk of all-cause mortality improvement, risk reduction, if the senior owns a pet. So
No,
pets are just...
Yeah, I want to add something too. By the way, just curious, because this will come up, I'm sure. Cat ownership is also effective. So, in some places, I know for my mom, she had a cat, and that cat was her everything. And there is that after they, the dogs are a little more obvious because of walking and all of that more activity, but they're getting very similar results with cats now. There's some research on cats and autism. I mean, just in schools, what it's doing. So for all of these numbers here, cat ownership is also effective. It may be a slight variance, but it's not what you would think. It's not what you would think. So even though the physical activity is important, a lot of that cardiovascular resilience also comes from lack of being lonely, being depressed, being anxious. And petting a cat is a surefire prescription as well.
Yep, absolutely. In fact, the blood pressure reduction on cat ownership is actually more impressive than on the dog ownership side. This particular study that we're referring to here was specific to dogs, but cats, there's actually a physical response to your heart rate and blood pressure when they are purring. So when you're sitting there petting a cat, it's actually lowering your own heart rate and calming your nervous system down as well.
Yep.
Thanks for adding that, Deb. So in terms of pet ownership among seniors, there's a number of different barriers that are important to talk about. So 55% of adults between 50 and 80 have a pet. So when people are evaluating moving into senior living facilities, they're looking for places that allow pets, of course, because 55% of them have one. But pets also come with a number of challenges for a senior, especially for a senior. All pet care is out of pocket, even if the owner happens to have pet insurance for their pet, they still have to front those costs. It's a reimbursement only model. So pet care can become quite expensive. In 2021, the average pet owner spend annually was $4,500 in pet care and associated supplies. And the average vet visit, especially for senior animals, and senior is considered 7 and up in the pet world, it's about $500 each visit. So that's national averages. That would include blood work exams and routine vaccinations, things of that nature. Back on those surveys that we're referring to earlier, about 1 in 5 seniors indicate that having that pet puts a huge strain on their budget. As we well know, most seniors are going to be on a fixed income. So having unexpected costs arise for your pet can be a really big challenge and can be a barrier to them either keeping the pet or getting one at all. So that's a really significant part of the reason why we are here to have this conversation. Specific to senior living, there are also the non-financial challenges and costs. Transportation being a big one. You know, you may have van services for transporting residents for things that they need to do. But a lot of this may fall on family members who may or may not be there. I actually just moved my aunt I'm in California and just moved my aunt into a nursing home in Pennsylvania. I'm useless if she needs help with her animal. So it could fall on the staff, it can fall on family members if there's something going on with that pet, and that's where telehealth can make a really big difference.
You know, I want to add something here too. Thank you, Nicole. I think two pieces on the pet ownership. The norm for the average for American population and households is about 70% have pets. So we're seeing a trend in how many people are expecting when they move into when they transition to a community to be able to bring their pet. And so we think as we add things like telehealth that make it easier and more cost effective to own a pet, that we'll see that number get closer to what the national average is. I think there's no doubt that we'll see a dramatic increase in the next few years just because of the awareness and popularity of pets in general. And number two, in the out-of-pocket costs, really, I don't know that on the human side we realized how few people actually have pet insurance. Right now, only about 3% of the population, pet-owning population, have pet insurance. It's staggeringly deficient compared to the human side. So what that means is when you're talking about out-of-pocket costs, really just consider that just about everybody who has a pet is coming out of pocket. It's rare for someone to have another ability to pay. So I know Nicole's going to get into exactly what happens with pet telehealth, but understand that that's the case. Did you have a question, Mark, or a comment on that?
No, I'm not agreeing with you. And I think, yeah, the cost is a thing, but I'm thinking also, as you guys are explaining, of course, the benefits to the senior in the senior living setting, you know, I still always have my operator's hat on, even though I've been away from it for a few years. And I'm just thinking, if I were an operator, I would enjoy a little more peace of mind knowing my residents had access to this kind of service, because then I think they would do a better job of keeping their pet healthy. And then as an operator, I wouldn't have to be too concerned about monitoring, you know, are the residents' pets well? Are they still healthy? Do I need to worry about them, you know, being sick and being around in an apartment or in part of the building? So, yeah.
I would love to revisit that towards the end, just to and explore that a bit more, because I think it's a really important point that we'd like to kind of dig into a bit, if it works, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
I'm getting ahead of myself here, but you know, for these kinds of services, is this pretty much the individual pet owner that would subscribe to a telehealth service, or are you actually seeing where organizations are seeing this is maybe a good idea, this is something we're going to sign on to and make available to our resident customers because we're a pet friendly place? I mean, kind of what are you seeing there?
It's both. It is both. So yeah, I think our first client, you probably know, a first client out in the general marketplace was Rover, and they become the largest pet sitting dog walking organization in the United States, and also in the UK now. They've taken a lot of that business with millions and millions of pets. The customer for us is actually the caregiver, the pet sitter, the dog walker, not the pet owner, because they're also interacting with the pets, and they have in some ways less information than the pet owner might. So they're in some ways, I think, even more in need of having an ability. And you imagine a caregiver going into a unit and seeing something going wrong with the dog. They may be the first one to actually notice that something's not right. And just like human healthcare, early intervention is a really big deal. especially considering how short a pet's lifespan is. So, you know, and a cat looking funny is pretty serious often. So, you know, you have a really good point. I think it's as important, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this market in particular, you know, the way our services are structured, it is essentially the pet that is covered, right? So that could be a family member that calls, it could be a resident, you know, the actual owner, or it could be that staff member, because any number of people is going to recognize that something's going on, perhaps even before the owner does. Especially when we think about like weekend staff and people that may only see the animal once a week, they're more likely to recognize that something's happening. And more commonly, our services are being offered by large groups for the entire population. So back on what you had mentioned, Mark, with your software, you know, something that could literally be toggled on for residents bringing in a pet. That's become more and more common, as it being an inclusive value add program for a facility.
Yeah.
And you know, Mark, you kind of hit on a really important part of all of this with, you know, the staff level concerns, and I can sort of tell a story that sort of illustrates that here. But you know, the issues that come into Whiskerdox, more than half of them can be addressed by simple home-based care modifications. So changing up a diet, or isolating and resting an animal with a limp, right? Things like that. A lot of things can be changed and taken care of just by doing something different in their day-to-day environment. Very similar to the statistics on nurse lines and things like that. About 70% of the time that people feel that there is something urgent going on, that it is an ER level of care, it is not. So 70% of cases, ER cases brought into us, are diverted to a lower cost level. We also do a lot to determine overall urgency and timing. So just because a primary care appointment might be required, there's often a number of steps that can be taken in the interim to make sure that that pet stays healthy while we work on arranging a visit for, you know, 7 to 10 days from now. The case that I'm thinking of that we had happen was an elderly gentleman living in a communal housing type situation, where there had been a dog that had gotten very ill on the site where he was living, and that dog passed away, and his dog started having some GI symptoms. You can imagine the panic that this gentleman was feeling, right? He's automatically thinking his dog's going to die, and he's unraveling emotionally. But in his particular situation, he had $9 to his name until his Social Security check came in. So his question for us was, what can I do? You know, this is probably going to be fatal, and I don't want to lose my pet. He's my world. Turned out the symptoms of what his pet was experiencing were nothing related to what had caused the illness in the other animal. And because it was a communal situation, we were able to educate him on what he needed to do to prevent any other animals in the building from getting sick, right? So preventing it from spreading through the environment. So this dog had some sort of a GI bug. We're going to do some isolation. We are going to change the diet and the feeding schedule temporarily to make sure that the animal is on the road to recovery. And then if there's no improvement in about a week, that's when we're going to want him to go in. right? And that was sort of the flow of that conversation. And turned out the animal did ultimately have to go in. He did not improve, but we were able to follow that case for the duration of the event and see that pet through to recovery. So, you know, a lot of times doing just little slight modifications at home is going to make a really big difference. But the other thing is we can prevent a whole lot of catastrophic things from ripping through these environments just by being able to educate the owner or the staff member on what they should be doing to prevent that from spreading through the environment. Another great case that I like to hit on here that illustrates sort of the ER part of it. Statistically speaking, most seniors are going to have more senior animals. I referenced that before. And as pets age, they tend to start having more neurological type symptoms. Seizures, for instance, become more common, and or seizure-like activity, right? Not necessarily true seizure. Anyone on this call, I'm sure, can imagine the panic. Maybe you've even experienced it yourself, where your animal just had a seizure and you're thinking the only thing you can do is bring them to the vet, or they're going to die, like something horrible is happening. We get those calls more often than probably anything else in terms of the neuro symptoms. And when those calls come in, the reality is they don't need to go to the ER. In fact, in vet med, you don't even treat seizures unless they occur multiple times within a 2-week period, especially in senior animals. Consumers don't know that. Staff members don't know that. And it is terrifying to watch an animal that can't communicate with you anything before or after go through that experience. So, you know, that's one of the really common drivers in senior animals for ER care. Of course, there's things like they got into something that they shouldn't have. Not everything's toxic. Not everything has to go. A lot of times giving a little bit of hydrogen peroxide can be enough to get something out of their system, if it was even something toxic. But in community-based settings as well, that's more likely to happen. An animal coming across snacks that a resident has in their room that they shouldn't have had, or or counter surfing and grabbing food off of their owner's food tray, right? Those kind of things happen quite a bit. We also had a really fun case, and in this chart here, you see sort of the initial intention reported by people. It's really common nowadays for people to have general husbandry type questions. So how do I take care of my pet? How do I do it more effectively? And especially when they have difficulty with transportation. One of the most heartwarming cases that we've had recently, especially in COVID, everything has changed, right? It's harder to get appointments. There's a veterinary shortage. So we added about 15 million pets nationally into households, and I think there were probably about 1,500 vet school graduates. So we can do the math out on that. That's not working, right? So there's a lot of delays to seeking care, but there's also delays for general day-to-day care, grooming appointments and things like that. It's harder to get into a groomer. We had a legally blind couple call us because they were having difficulty getting a grooming appointment for their cat, and were desperate to figure out, they both had bleeding disorders, so, you know, getting a slight scratch from their cat's nail is going to be a big problem. And they were 2 weeks off schedule with their biweekly grooming, nail trim appointments at a groomer. So they called us and asked was there anything they could do. And we were actually able to talk them through, by feel alone, because they couldn't see very well, how to trim their cat's nails. Fortunately, this was a very cooperative cat that was used to having its nails groomed. I'm sure there are many here who have had cats that are not so cooperative. But it was a very, cats generally are not that good for it. But when they've gone every 2 weeks for their whole life, they're usually pretty good. So they were able to trim the cat's nails just by our coaching, right? And that saved the owner too, because ultimately at the end of the day, they couldn't afford a scratch. That could have been very bad for them physically.
Are your telehealth encounters always requiring a camera, or are they just maybe often through just the phone audio?
That's a great question. Actually, video is the least requested service that we offer. And a lot of the reason for that being, people don't really want to have to get on webcams. I think we all have webcam fatigue, for one. But another, it's very difficult to get the animal to cooperate. So it's easier to describe what you're trying to do or what you're seeing, both for our agents and for the owner, to try to describe it rather than actually put the animal on a video and expect them to either do the thing or be able to hold the camera steady, things like that. So most of our conversations, 60-40, 60% phone, 40% chat.
You know, it's interesting. If you think about just on a day-to-day basis, whenever my dog does something really cute and I grab the camera, he doesn't do it again, or and cats, you're chasing them. They're under the bed now when you're trying to get a picture and trying to hold the cat and describe. We were shocked to find out that how little, and we've also found that, and we've heard that that's true on the human side. So the trend is really, I think the key piece is being able to get help right away. And so, we're 30, and some telehealth providers, there are more telehealth providers now since we launched. So, some are set an appointment for the future, which is fine in many scenarios, but oftentimes getting somebody to talk to right now is really important. And I think it's more psychological than anything else because you're afraid and you don't know what's wrong. We've had so many calls where, it can be a pet sleeping and they're twitching and they think it's a seizure. So, just getting people to calm down and relax and say, you know what, this is normal, this is okay. And then building that trust. I want to, if I could, I want to mention something because Nicole mentioned your aunt, and I had the same experience with my mom when we took her, found her a transitional community, so independent living, et cetera, and she needed to have her cat. And so we had to look for one because they did not all allow pets, which was a little surprising to us. This was a few years ago, and I think the trend has moved more towards, pets are a good thing. But for her, when I thought about her experience of giving up her pet, would have been like the final loss. Like she'd lost her husband. She couldn't drive anymore. She was losing her home. To take that pet away, it was almost it felt for her like the last emotional connection she had, to her family, to everything else. And I think it just borders on wrong that we are not making a better effort to make sure people can keep their pets. And this is not just seniors, this is everyone. Families that have to give up pets for financial reasons or whatever. There are more solutions today than ever before to manage taking care of a pet. People who work even sometimes have to give up a pet. Not anymore. So I think the tide has turned, and we're going to see so much difference with what we call in our industry the pet effect, and how it manages all of these things, anxiety, and we're seeing a huge drive with employers as well. So I think it's a trend nationally that we're going to gratefully and happily see.
So questions come in here about payment, and maybe you'll get more into this, but let me know if we're going to get into this later, and we don't have to address it now. But this is like a subscription service, I take it. So the question is around, well, it's two things. It's scheduling, like, do I have to make a telehealth visit appointment, or, you know, do services like yours also just take, you know, call-in, drop-in calls? And then as far as payment goes, do you have to, the question is around setting up like a payment account, or do you submit claims on behalf of whatever insurance plan you might have, or even I think you're going to talk about Medicare and Medicaid. So kind of all of that, appointments, and then how do they get paid for with services like this?
Sure. So we do not work on an appointment-based model. So we are 24/7 instant access. An owner or a staff member could pick up the phone and call, could join a chat anytime, 24 hours a day, and be connected to an agent, generally in under 45 seconds. So appointments are not necessary. Open access for that. And then in terms of payment, so we have several different models. We have a consumer-facing product that is billed monthly. And when working with large organizations, we have done things in the past where we will create subsidized discounts, sort of more like wholesale pricing, if it's going to be offered to the whole facility, or a per resident per month kind of billing structure that goes through the facility, and then they are able to charge the fees associated on their side back to the account holder. So whether that's the family or the resident, that's our most common model, is for it to run more at the facility level and then be billed out, reimbursed by the family or the owner, pet owner, through the standard billing processes at a facility. So that would be our most common model. But we do have subsidized discounts and things like that available direct to the consumer if it's being offered as part of a voluntary portfolio of services. And then you did mention the Medicare Advantage part of this. So in early 2022, January 2022, we were added as a value add benefit to 3 regional Medicare Advantage plans for all of their Medicare Advantage policyholders. So that is growing. That market is getting more and more sophisticated and interested in adding these sort of value add benefits to those portfolios. And why, really? Why? Big driver for them is it improves star ratings, having higher satisfaction. But of course, they know that there are all of these additional benefits to the pet ownership in that senior population. And the biggest thing that these seniors need generally for Medicare Advantage policyholders is resource management. They need to understand when, where, how, and how much they should be spending on their pets.
I know, just for our participants, you know, when in preparation for today, I was talking to the folks at Whiskerdox, and I was genuinely surprised. I'll even use the word shocked at you know, that this service is so recognized by Medicare, that CMS says the benefits of pet ownership contribute so much to the social determinants of health that we're willing to help pay for pet care because we see what it is doing to the well-being of our beneficiaries in our health plan. I think that's really profound. And I like how consistent it is with that movement, again, towards resident-centeredness, honoring resident preferences, and the influence of social determinants of health on our well-being, especially as we are older and transition to more supportive living environments.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mark, because that was a bit of a surprise to us. We thought it should happen, but we had not approached that market. We had, basically kind of hung out in pet insurance companies, employers, large groups, microchip providers. I mentioned Rover.com. We've been servicing them for 7 years now. They're pet sitters and walkers. But when we got the phone call, I said, he said, we want to add this to our, he said, we just want to add this. And I said, you mean you're going to it's a fully paid benefit to you? And he said, yes. And I said, why? And we wanted to know if they understood why. And he said, it's all about isolation. For them, it was all about, and COVID certainly was the one that shed a light on what pets did for people. People knew that. Pet owners know that, and people were getting pets at historic rates, as Nicole mentioned. So I think it was an obvious thing, and it was interesting that a Medicare Advantage plan, well, 3 of them actually, came to us and said, we'd like to do this. And we said, okay, good idea. So, I think it's moving forward quickly. As we know, it takes a while to get those things approved through all the regulatory bodies. But I see this opening up more and more opportunities for people in general, pet owners, to get what they need and to do it in a more cost-effective way. Because honestly, the other piece, I do not think pet insurance has still cracked the code. As a pet owner, we've never bought pet insurance, and we should. We're the kind of people that will pay everything we can to at end of life care, for example. And we still don't see, and so I think a lot of that's plan design, but we're not seeing that change. So I don't think all of the things that perfect storm that's come, the veterinary shortage, the isolation, loneliness, awareness of pet benefits, none of that's going away. To the veterinary shortage, it's critical. We're at about 40% shortage in the United States, and there's no end in sight in the near future in terms of how many candidates are coming through veterinary school. So there's a scramble going on to find solutions, and this is certainly part of the solution, yeah. I think.
Yep, I would absolutely agree. I think, Deb, you hit a little bit on the shortage issue on the veterinary industry. We're also seeing extreme shortages in pet food and access to those ancillary services I had mentioned, the groomers and things like that. But there are a number of challenges and things that can go wrong with pets if you have to change their food abruptly, for instance, right? Their GI systems are not like ours. Our team are all certified in nutrition coaching. Same thing with pets as with people. Your diet actually is a big driver of your overall health. So we went through and had our team get certified in nutrition coaching. And in recent months, we've been getting more and more questions about how to make sudden and abrupt diet transitions because of pet food shortages across the board. And that can be true when somebody's moving into a facility as well. Maybe it's no longer easy to access that particular food, or maybe they've gotten a new pet, right, and have to make a sudden transition. That can cause all sorts of symptoms that can be alarming, or maybe they just need guidance in how to do it correctly, right? So we have our team trained to do all of that as well.
Deb brought in some reinforcements, I see.
Oh, Deb brought reinforcement.
So he's 10 years old. He's doing really well. But yeah, he's my joy every day. And we're in a great business, Mark. We can do this. Every conference call we do, we bring our pets on. Seriously. Many times people will start by telling us what pet they own rather than what they do for a living or anything. They'll say, yep, I've got 3 cats and one of them's crazy. Yeah.
Well, and just for our participants, usually these webinars are a little bit more techy and a little bit more, I don't really want to say, maybe software focused, but one of the reasons I wanted to, and again, just remind everybody to bring, the folks from Whiskerdox on is, look, pets are becoming more and more of a presence in senior living, and I think we need to think about what are the strategies and solutions out there that can help make, as a provider, my support of our resident customers' desire to have a pet easier, and also give me as the operator peace of mind. Because, let's face it, I think most senior operators, if they were honest, they would say, I really am not interested in having 100 dogs and cats running around the building, but what systems can I put in place to best manage this? And, I briefly mentioned how our customers are managing pet services in Eldermark, but to be able to think about telehealth services like what Whiskerdox does, and the peace of mind factor that I always preach that was so important as an operator for our teams to, in everything we do for resident customers and their natural supports and our colleagues, we need to offer peace of mind. And so I see what you guys are doing in this market is really contributing to that, more easily for access, ease of, I'll even say ease of payment, but ease of access and ease of the solution. I don't have to worry so much about how am I going to get to the vet's office, if there even is one near me, because that's the other thing on access. And it was interesting to see the high percent. I mean, it was over 50% of the, I guess, the pet visits really can just be very easily handled through a telehealth encounter. And, that's a lot of the visits. I think, gosh, we almost had one of those here the other night. Our cat was throwing up, and that's just not like her. And of course, our first reaction is, should she be seen?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
That's the first thing that crosses everyone's mind.
Should she be seen? Just like you do with a little kid. Like, do I need to go to urgent care, or do I call the nurse helpline, or whatever? And so I really appreciate what you guys are offering, and thank you for being available today. Any final words from the Whiskerdox team, or
Yeah, I always have words, Mark. So
or anything that we should be, anything that we should be, that we should hit on in kind of closing that we haven't.
I'd like to add that, you mentioned people would have access to our email. So there are a lot of services out there that are really helpful that we think would be beneficial in sort of developing a pet strategy. Of course, we like telehealth, but also things like end-of-life solutions. How do we help them find a home for a pet that finally does have to be given up? How do we handle that better? Things like that. So there's a whole bunch of options out there. So we're happy to talk about all of them and talk about how to develop a pet strategy for a residency.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much, Nicole and Deb, for your contributions to the webinar today. Really appreciate it. I think we gave our participants lots to think about around some additional solutions for supporting pets in senior living and helping our resident customers have an easier time of keeping their pets healthy in that assisted living setting or senior living setting. So again, thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Just remind our participants, our next regularly scheduled Leadership Forum webinar is for Wednesday, March 1st at 12 Central Time. Be sure to check for email blasts. I'm not sure yet on a topic for March 1st. I think I've got stuff set up, but I won't make any promises today. Or you can access the webinar calendar on eldermark.com and go there for what our webinar calendar has in store for you. I was just checking, a question came through, and it was a thank you question. So thank you, participant, for that very much. And again, for everybody who's on, thank you for your good work. We really appreciate it. We'll hopefully see you next month. And once again, one last thank you to Deb and Nicole from Whiskerdox. What a great solution. Thank you also for your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.